Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of Trade the Chain. It is Monday, February 8th, and we're glad you could join us because it is a monumentous day, to say the least. It's huge. Elon Musk, 1.5 billion in Bitcoin. Now your wallets are out of control. I'm joined by my co-host Ryan Gorman, CJ and Monty from MarketRebellion.com. And we got quite the show. It's obviously going to be a lot about Bitcoin and what's happening today. Ryan, I hand it off to you, man.
Thanks, sir. This is just a reminder that all content provided by Trade the Chain is strictly for informational and educational purposes only. None of this is investment advice. I can't stress that enough.
Only if it comes from Elon.
Trade the Chain is brought to you by Trade the Chain, a 24/7 community of traders around the world. We're now in 23 time zones, people, after a pop in membership over the weekend. Over 800 members.
Ryan,
yes.
You can only get in 23 time zones. I think we've hit the max.
That's right, unless someone's floating on a boat out in the middle of the Pacific or something. A global community of traders, all ages and abilities, using AI-driven sentiment indicators, actionable alerts, and real-time sig devs to trade like a crypto insider. TradeTheChain.com for a 14-day trial.
And a quick glimpse of the beautiful Trade the Chain dashboard with sentiment data of all
that Bitcoin sentiment.
Yes. And then MarketRebellion.com/crypto. This is Monty and I's community. Get access to exclusive trade ideas, some of our macro portfolio allocations, a pro charting platform, which I'll showcase in just a minute here, a trading education curriculum, and an elite community of traders all around the world, and much more. If you're serious about trading crypto, this is the service that gives you everything you need all in one place. Start your first month trial for just $1 at MarketRebellion.com/crypto. And if you haven't subscribed, please do that as well and hit the like button. We appreciate that. Helps us spread our content. But heading down to Bitcoin here and the big boards. What a day. We have Elon listening to Michael Saylor and buying quite a bit of Bitcoin. The funny thing is Elon paid 1.5 billion, or I should say Tesla. Saylor paid what, like 1.2 billion? Yet Saylor got more Bitcoin because price has been going up so parabolically in the last few weeks. We are hitting a 9 here on the 1 hour and have since kind of come back down. So just a little interim correction we're seeing after that initial spike to start the day. Ryan, you said we had that news dropped of Tesla around 6 a.m. I believe it was 6 a.m. New York time.
It was about that. I think I saw the first tweet about it, and that's about the same time the sentiment data on the Trade the Chain dashboard really spiked. And about, I don't know, half an hour after that is when the price really went on the parabolic run we're seeing there.
There you go. Sentiment data was quicker than people actually waking up.
It was the first time I've seen Bitcoin sentiment spike over 100. It did so briefly, but it did do it. That's incredible.
Yeah, so this has been the critical chart for me and why I have kind of leaned bearish when we've tested this 30K price level. It's just like, these are the technicals. I have to abide by the technicals. I thought we were going to go down and touch here, you know, this moving average, something at about 23 to 25K. Evidently, this Fibonacci level at 28K was enough to hold support for Bitcoin over the last 3 weeks. Now, ever since, we're going back and going on top of the top Bollinger Band, which is exactly what I like to see from a bullish perspective. However, we've ever since kind of been rejected in the short term and have been rejected at the critical 618 Fibonacci level of 45K. If we can get above 45K and close, then that is a blue sky breakout for the bulls on Bitcoin and a clear path to ultimately 62K, which is the next resistance Fibonacci level. However, there are some analysts, as well as you know, some options analysts in our Market Rebellion community who have, you know, hypothesized a potential double top here. You know, I don't know if that's true. It certainly could be possible if this truly was the top, with Tesla calling it. But, you know, Monty mentioned something before the show that's very important, and that's like, this market cycle has been entirely different than 2017 with the corporate and institutional interest. We've seen that and we'll get to this as well when we talk about the CME futures on Ethereum and not having any bearish effect whatsoever. But ultimately, if we don't get above this 45K level in the next couple days, and we continue to go down and test 30K, might be a little concerning. But as I said, we got to stay above this top band. And if we do, and we get above 45K, then we're in really serious bullish breakout territory. So a very exciting time, but I still want to see that full breakthrough.
Yeah, agreed. I
Go
think
ahead.
one thing you said there that was pretty interesting, and I know a lot of people kind of shared that same opinion, was that we were kind of hitting almost what looked like a double top right around here when we were approaching the 41K previous all-time high. So there was really no way to anticipate this news about Tesla this morning, but I think it kind of negates all the predictions that we were kind of entering this area of a double top and due for another reversal. I think you pointed out, CJ, that we are on a green 9 on the 1 hour, and there are some other indications that a reversal is maybe possible in the interim here. I mean, we set up this new price ceiling of about 44K, but I think this morning's price action and just all the news around this really kind of mitigates the bearish outlook in the macro perspective. We've been talking so long about Bitcoin just continually setting lower highs and lower highs. Now we're kind of breaking out of that. And when CJ was showing the weekly chart, you could kind of tell that the Bollinger Band that we were kind of using as a prediction of the price floor during a correction is really starting to catch up. And I mean, one thing we talked about is the sentiment around Bitcoin. Trade the Chain has it at 85 for daily sentiment. I don't think I've ever seen it this high. And it's so interesting, right? Because 2020 was a year that was defined by institutions kind of driving this bullish price action. And now we're kind of getting a combination of both institution and retail speculation here with Tesla, because I mean, $1.5 billion from Tesla, but that kind of sparked a greater interest within the community on Twitter. Lots of people took note of Elon's bullish stance and followed suit. So if you look at looking at the ties data here, you can see, like Ryan said, we got this massive spike in sentiment, pretty much higher than I've ever seen it, and price action followed. So the sentiment is still very high, and that's why we're kind of still lingering around 42K. There's still tremendous buy pressure coming. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Asia trades this news. But for me, this today has really been a catalyst to shift my outlook from kind of bearish neutral to more bullish neutral. So really big day for Bitcoin.
So
That was huge for Mr. Short to say.
it really was. I'm surprised because, before this news, as you were saying, the long-term outlook, at least not long-term, but medium-term, short and medium-term, was bearish. And Bitcoin has shown in previous news-driven pops that it'll hit a new all-time high, and then there's an immediate drop from from profit taking. You don't see that happening this time because that's kind of the logical outcome every time we hit a new high.
Oh yeah, no, I do still think that there will be some profit taking. I think we're already kind of seeing that now, but this still sets us up for much more of a bullish outlook going forward, just because of, I mean, before we were kind of caught in this this area here of this kind of descending triangle after we hit this top, but really now we're setting a new price floor here of 38K. So I do expect some buy pressure to start accumulating right around here below 38K. We got this set up support now from the 9. So if we can kind of hold strong here, we might actually consolidate in this level rather than in this level down here. So although it's kind of like you said, Ryan, when we see these news related events are typically accompanied by profit taking, I do think that will occur. But just the total shift in perspective of Bitcoin, I think may be enough to keep us above this 38.3K level, which would be a much healthier formation kind of forming this bullish staircase. So I would really like to see this act as the new price floor, but I do agree that we're going to see a bit of profit taking as we continue to hover around 43, 44K.
RBC Capital Capital Markets put out a report earlier this morning saying that Apple is likely the next company to buy into Bitcoin. Should that occur, I mean, at this point, it can't be a coincidence that it's right after Saylor and MicroStrategy had this conference with nearly 7,000 corporate participants talking about how they wanted to adopt Bitcoin and him giving them the blueprint, the step-by-step plan. If Apple buys into Bitcoin, they have so much cash in reserves. They have an ungodly amount of cash in reserves. They're not going to buy just 1.5 billion, most likely. And once they do that, some analysts are saying Bitcoin hits 50,000 if this announcement comes, in the next week or so. It hits 50,000 in the next week. Do you see that being a possibility?
Oh yeah. I mean, once we get past 40K, or specifically 45K is the critical level of resistance for me right now. It's just blue sky territory. It's price discovery. And like, what bigger endorsement could you have than Apple, one of the world's largest companies, buying Bitcoin to put on its cash reserves? And Ryan, you make such a good point, because while it's bullish that Tesla's buying Bitcoin, in the grand scheme of things, 1.5 billion is not that much in market cap. But if Tesla came through and they bought 10 billion or possibly 20 billion, we could go to 50K or 62K, in my opinion, in just 3 weeks. Those are the types of fundamental parabolic moves that we can see from Bitcoin. So it's going to be really interesting.
So is that what we have to do? We have to talk Elon into another 8.5 billion so we can get some more market movement. What are we looking at as far as this is obviously becoming more and more of a corporate strategy? But I got a couple questions I want to pose to the group. One is, if Apple did come in, what would you think how much they would buy in Bitcoin? Because their balance sheet is so ridiculously overstocked with cash that even if they bought 10 billion, it wouldn't matter to them. It's like lunch money. So that's the first question. And the second question is, what's going to happen? Because these are corporates. What's going to happen when they have to take profit on these? And this has to go back out into the market, where we now have corporates that are accumulating such sums of Bitcoin. And if we have a macro trend downturn in the equities markets that forces these guys to liquidate positions for profit, that's a massive flow of Bitcoin back into the market on the order book. So those are the two questions. What are the answers?
Well, I think it's kind of, I mean, that's a great question, but I think it kind of works in both ways, in the sense that when these people are, or when the equities are kind of dumping and these companies are forcing to sell Bitcoin, I think the demand for Bitcoin would be although they're dumping at a high rate, the demand for Bitcoin itself as a utility store of value would be increasing if we're seeing the equities go down so rapidly. People are going to be looking to put their money somewhere. And if these companies have to sell some Bitcoin to balance out their balance sheet, yeah, that will definitely affect the price. But I don't ultimately expect it to kill the demand for Bitcoin, because, like I said, people are going to need to put their money somewhere, and Bitcoin kind of fits the thesis for a safe haven asset. So I think that is one of the worst case scenarios to imagine, is kind of these new corporations that have accumulated this Bitcoin rapidly dumping it. But I think the scenario that would lead to that would ultimately be healthy for the larger thesis of Bitcoin. So yeah, that's going to be an important milestone for Bitcoin if that does ever happen. But I don't think it would really be, we'd see some major price action to the downside, but it wouldn't be by any means detrimental to Bitcoin as a whole.
Yeah, the thing that has always kind of bothered me is that when people get into Bitcoin, very few ever consider an exit strategy. Has Saylor ever talked about the fact that this is a heavily volatile asset and it goes through market cycles and it reaches periods where price has significant downtrends? Very predictable too, judging by the last few halving cycles. So how do these corporations have an exit strategy? Are they looking at the stock to flow ratio and saying, we're going to take profit when there's 800 days left till the next block halving, because historically that's been the most optimal time to take profit? And if they do all do that at the same time, like, how is that going to be different from previous market cycles? But as of now, people Bitcoin maximalists specifically carry this idea that, you buy Bitcoin so that you can buy things with Bitcoin in 15 or 20 years. But for me personally, like, I'd rather make some cash off this one market cycle, and secure some profit. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's just one thing I've always wondered.
I'm down. I'm not above taking some profit and putting it into some DeFi or putting it into some ETH. I don't see the harm in that.
But okay, so how much? What do you think if Apple does go in? What do you think the check is going to be? Do you think it's going to be $1 billion, $1.5 billion, or you think they're gonna make a whopping purchase?
I feel like they're gonna have to go bigger than that for it to be, like you said, Alex. They're a $1 trillion company, so we're talking maybe tens of billions to hundreds of billions for it to actually even matter at all. So I would imagine that it would be a significant amount of Bitcoin. And when Apple does things, they tend to kind of go big with it. So I don't expect them to just come out and buy a measly 1.5 billion, but we'll see.
I'd be shocked if that's all they bought. 10 billion seems like the right number for them, but I'm not a corporate treasurer and I'm just sitting behind a camera on YouTube. So
I mean, 50 billion would be nice though, Ryan. 50 billion would be really nice.
I think that's too big right now for this market, 50 billion. I don't think that they can find 50 billion worth.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
100 Bitcoin is like, what, 700 billion total market cap? They would be taking 1/7 of all Bitcoins if they accumulated $100 billion.
Right.
Well, that's good too.
That's like that argument. That's like that argument everybody loved to pose when Bitcoin was, down there. Like, oh my God, Jeff Bezos could buy all the Bitcoin in the world. No, Jeff Bezos could never buy all the Bitcoin. No one person.
Not getting mine.
Yeah, exactly. This is really exciting news. I mean, this is probably, I know a lot of people that we all know, friends, stuff who just woke up, were so excited. And it's funny because I have people who aren't in crypto who are all of a sudden like texting me, hey, did you see Elon Musk bought $1.5 billion crypto? Yeah, dude, like 8 hours ago. So let's hope this keeps the momentum going. I mean, this news is probably carrying Doge along with it, considering he's the CEO of Doge as well. Where are we with Ethereum? Because earlier we couldn't have an all Bitcoin episode. Ethereum, Ryan pointed out before the show, did tap onto an all-time high today, which is crazy. We're seeing some ridiculous Ethereum blockchain coins going through the roof. Aave, I mean, that thing's gone phenomenal. What was it? Uni, $20 today. Let's see the charts. What do we got going there, CJ Monty?
It's funny, before you get into this, CJ, real quick, it's funny, Alex, you mentioned earlier this year that the ETH futures launching on CME would be a nothing burger effect on ETH. Some traders are concerned that it would send ETH into a downward spiral. I mean, clearly the Bitcoin Tesla announcement news had some impact on ETH, as a rising tide does kind of lift all ships. But for them to have absolutely no impact at all on ETH, I mean, clairvoyant.
Yeah, but also at the same time, maybe that's the nothing burger. I don't know. It was, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, to your point, that were concerned about it coming up. It did time with the news of Tesla, this morning, kind of overshadowing it. So I don't know. We'll see. ETH seems unstoppable, though, Ryan.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, all the futures really mean is just more people can bet against it. And sure, at the top or peak of a bull market, which is when we got the CME futures in 2017 or early 2018, shortly after Bitcoin crashed, we're not in that same stage of the market cycle, this turnaround. We're about, if you were to measure it based on that macro cycle, based on halvings that I was talking about earlier, we're only about halfway or 3/4 of the way. I'd say we're about the 6th or 7th inning into this bull market, maybe even earlier. But due to that fact, like, we're just not, Ethereum isn't facing anywhere near the amount of sell pressure it was, or that Bitcoin was after those initial futures first came out. And that's why I think, we've seen that nothing burger that Alex correctly predicted. But over the technicals here, hey man, we're still all the way above this top band. We are still trending bullish with the support following the green 9, which is a warning signal. But all-time highs. Same type of thing on Bitcoin on the 1 hour. We got to a 9, went up to a new high, and then were rejected. So, you know, it kind of goes along with what Monty was saying about Bitcoin earlier, how we're now likely going to consolidate on a higher level. And I see the first immediate support here at around 1600, 1667 to be exact. But this is looking pretty good from a bullish perspective, both fundamentally and technically. So I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to your point about how the market is just significantly different for ETH right now than it was for Bitcoin when the Bitcoin futures were announced. So the Bitcoin futures were actually announced right here. So right before the reversal and the start of a year-long bear market. This is much different for ETH because the market is just so much more robust at this point, and it's significantly less overbought than what we saw with Bitcoin in 2017. So, I mean, if you're just looking at the weekly chart of ETH here, you can see that we are at a previous level. We were at 1500 before. So it's not like we're completely out in the realm of all-time highs that we had never seen before. ETH is an asset that has really kind of benefited over the past year from the institutional speculation in Bitcoin and some of the profit taking that has gone on there. So when you make the comparison of the launch of ETH futures with the launch of Bitcoin futures, in many ways, it's comparing apples to oranges because it's just a completely different time in the market. The market is appealing to completely different people. I mean, in 2017, that was almost entirely retail speculation that was driving Bitcoin up. So it's really no surprise that it got crushed by the futures. But this is just so different. So I don't expect a similar effect to what we saw in Bitcoin in 2017, and I'm still bullish on ETH.
This is a classic example of people equating correlation with causation back in the futures in 2017. And if there's anything that these ETH futures have taught us, it's that don't conflate, you know, correlation with causation. So,
but also you're not taking a direct bet on ETH. It's just cash delivery. So you're not actually taking a position in ETH. Bitcoin futures on traditional exchanges haven't really had the same impact that Bitcoin futures that are physically delivered have had. So an uptake usually takes for a long time to happen. Look how long it took for people to start seriously trading VIX futures. I mean, that was years until after it came out. People really paid attention to it. So,
well, I agree to a point of that. I will say, though, I never actually came across a person who took physical delivery of a BACT future contract, which is where, basically where they started. So this is actually, we could probably delve into a deep report on this. It's a good question. I mean, what does and doesn't impact from future? It doesn't matter if it's cash settled. Doesn't matter if it's physically settled. Was 2017 different from now, and is that the effect? I don't know. This could be a debate.
But you can't bet on it. That's the only thing that matters. Like, whatever.
Everybody's just stopped with this argument. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us today. Listen, it's been a wild 8 hours or so in the office for all of us. Things are definitely exciting. Just looking at the charts here, you got a couple of big breakouts that have happened. Luna 61%, Avalanche 56%. BitTorrent, I don't know where 152% came out of in the last 24 hours, but it did. And Elron, which we covered a couple of maybe a week or so ago on the show. So those are some big performers. DeFi, everybody, all the panelists' points here, really ticking up, a lot more locked in. I think what are we on par to hit? I don't know, maybe 40 billion in another 2 weeks on DeFi. You think locked in?
Yeah, definitely possible.
Yeah,
just on appreciation. Like, it doesn't even need more deposits. Just appreciation of these assets alone, it could hit that much.
True.
It was 28 billion. What, last week when we were talking about it? So
yeah.
34 billion on Friday. So it went up 6 billion in 1 week.
Yeah, it's a billion. Maybe it's a billion a day. You know what's really great is when CJ first started showing the charts from like a year ago and stuff on DeFi, is that he pointed out like 2 billion went into the market the whole
2
month.
billion.
2 million. Sorry, 2 million went into the market a year ago this month. That's it. Now we're talking 1 billion a day going in. I mean, that puts even Elon Musk and Michael Saylor to shame. You can't play with those numbers. Oh man! All right, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll cover some more coins. We just had to focus on the Bitcoin. What's that?
On CNBC, right behind me. There he is.
Oh, there he is.
There it is. It's I just stop, Ryan. Just
now I have him on my wall too, just like our friend.
Just like Weston. Hang on to your handlebars. No honey holes today, but we will see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.